Thanks for joining me today. We are going to discuss today the nonprofit life cycle, and we are going to use this graphic here to talk about that. And although it might not sound like an extremely exciting topic, I do think it is really important to examine where your organization is at in a nonprofit life cycle, because not only does it give you information about where you are currently, but where you are going in the coming months and years ahead. So with that, we're gonna dive right in, and we are going to start right here at the idea stage for a nonprofit. So at the very beginning, obviously, someone is coming up with an idea for an organization or nonprofit. Generally, that's coming from a need that is seen in the community. And so someone is coming up with this idea, right now determining, can we even make this dream a reality? So with this person starting it, it's very, very basic. There's really no finances involved at this point. If there are any, it's really in-kind donations coming into the organization. You don't have formal staff, you don't have a formal board of directors, there's no marketing or PR or anything. This is really just in kind of the dream phase to even see if you can move to the next stage of growth. So once that idea has kind of settled a little bit, can start to grow, you're moving into the startup phase of an organization. Now at the startup phase, again, you typically have one founder who is really driving this growth for the organization. So in the startup phase, the founder may or may not be a volunteer role as the director. Typically you aren't really gonna have paid staff, maybe a couple, but it's very, very limited because your finances still are very limited at this point. You are just really in the beginning stages. If you do have revenue coming in, it's very small. Again, might have some in-kind goods being donated to the organization just to get it up and running. At this phase, your programs are really just in their infancy. So maybe piloting a program, maybe a couple of programs, but really, really basic services are being provided for the clients just to kind of test the waters and see if you can continue the growth trajectory for the organization. So again, just really, really basic. The organization is in the infancy stage. At this point, your board, you might have a board of directors that is starting, but the board is going to be relatively small, made up of just a few people, and the group is really going to be quite homogeneous. So it might be made up of people that are close to the director, that have an emotional tie to the organization, that are current volunteers, things like that. So not a huge amount of diversity on your board, not necessarily looking for different skill sets, but again, people that have a close tie to the organization, feel a strong emotional pull to it, and want to see the organization thrive and grow would be your board of directors. At this stage, it might be very beginning marketing. So, you might be creating a name, maybe a little bit of branding, some very basic marketing materials for your programs, but not a huge push at all for the marketing. Really at this startup phase, you're trying to see, is this organization or are these programs viable? Can we see them continue to grow and serve more people that are in need of the services? So if the answer is yes, if the organization is still seeing need in the community, still seeing revenue come in, you're going to move up to the growth phase of an organization. Now during this growth phase, and keeping in mind that there is no specific timeline for this, it's not based on a year, it's not based on 10 years. Each organization is really different in their life cycle, depending on the mission of the organization, the size, the community. just lots and lots of different factors. So some organizations are going to be much faster in their life cycle. Some it's going to be decades. So it's very different for every organization. So moving into the growth phase. Now in this growth phase, obviously programs, services continuing to grow. You're really seeing at this point a greater demand for service than what you can actually meet. So still seeing that need in the community and being able to provide some services and the potential to provide more services in the future. A lot of that is based on revenue. At this point, you are starting to see some relationships with different funders, money coming in from either individual donors or foundations or corporate donors. You're starting to have some of those established relationships with funders, but it's still very unpredictable. So you don't have a steady stream of revenue where you can predict year to year where that money is coming from. But you're starting to see a little bit more predictability with the money that's coming into the organization. So programs growing, unmet need, still potential to grow more, limited funds, but again, more potential to grow that with enhanced relationships. This is where your board of directors is really going to change a little bit for the organization. So you're probably going to see an expansion just with the number of board members in this growth phase. You're going to see an expansion in the diversity within your board. And a lot of times that's going to be within the skill sets and the professional background of your board members. So when you're in the startup phase, it's really people that are close to the organization, feel strongly, might volunteer. This in the growth phase, you're starting to be less of a hands-on board, more of a governance board, and more of a board where you're looking for very specific skill sets for your board composition. So that might be really seeking out somebody that has a financial background or accounting to help with that side of the organization, somebody that has some marketing, PR, or somebody that's in human resources. So trying to fill some of those gaps in your organization with different skill sets that your board members can bring to the table. So that's kind of how your board's gonna grow. Again, you're gonna be more hands-off and looking more at a governance structure for your organization, working on the policies and procedures and bylaws, getting all of that really solid and in place for the organization. This is also the phase where you are gonna start to see some marketing or PR come out of the organization. You know, your programs are really, really growing, you're expanding services, so the marketing is gonna get enhanced. Still gonna be quite a bit of word of mouth marketing, but also some additional, maybe social media or web presence type of marketing as well. At the growth phase is also where you will see some staff growth. So really in the startup phase, the primary staff person is going to be your executive director, maybe some paid staff, but very, very limited. In the growth phase is really where you're going to start to see more paid staff, definitely a hierarchy in your staff structure. And so the executive director, different management levels, client service levels of positions. So you are going to see that as well. And at this growth phase, you're really focusing on how can we continue to build this organization to serve all those that we can and the best ability that we can. So this phase can take a really long time. It's not necessarily a fast phase. Some organizations will be there for a very long time, many years, and that's okay. Because the next phase, maturity, is really where we all aspire to get our organization to, right? At this point, you can kind of see the demand for your services has leveled off. So you're really meeting the needs, you're fulfilling your mission, and your programs and services are operating really efficiently and effectively. At this point in time is when you can really start to do some evaluation of your programs and your organization. During this part, it's too new to do too much of that. Now you can start to do some of that reflection, the evaluation, and reform some of your programs so they are operating really efficiently and effectively. Again, you'll probably have even more staff, just a really good organizational staff structure at this point, a really solid board of directors with a diversified skill set. And at this point, the executive director, along with the board of directors, is really working on strategy. So you have a good strategic plan in place. You're doing that evaluation, which then feeds your strategic plan and your organizational operations. And yeah, so it's obviously a great place. Again, can last a very long time. And that's great because we don't want to get to this point where it's in the decline phase. So I'm first going to talk about decline. And that can happen from a number of different things. Maybe the organization had an issue where they got some really negative PR, and your community support started to fall off. Maybe there just wasn't as much need for your organization anymore. So that can really be from like market saturation. A lot of different organizations and people saw an unmet need and simultaneously kind of tried to meet that need. And so now the market is just very saturated with those organizations. And so there just isn't as much need for what you do. Same with duplication of services. Other organizations could be duplicating what your organization is also providing. So there's just a number of different reasons why this might decline. Obviously, in this point, finances are dropping off, support's dropping off, less volunteers, people aren't wanting to join your board, you have staff positions you can't fill, things like that. So obviously, in the decline phase, there is the potential that your organization will sunset. So that's kind of what this is. At this point, maybe you have realized that the need has been met for your organization, and you're ready to sunset and end that, and you and the board of directors will come together to determine what a phase-out plan is. Or maybe you did hit a road bump. There was an issue with your organization, a situation that gave you bad PR, and you were starting to decline. At that point, you can also take it to a different level where you're transforming the organization. So you're really sitting down, strategizing, coming up with a different plan of action. And that might be changing your services, changing your organizational structure, coming up with a new strategic plan, a number of different things, but something that is really transformative and going to change you on that path so you're avoiding the decline and sunset of your organization. So once you kind of get to that point, deciding, should we close, or is there something else we can do to continue the life cycle of our organization? So that, in a nutshell, is the nonprofit life cycle. Thank you so much for listening today.